Good afternoon, USA. Welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Unshaved, unbathed, unedited, but scripted quite a bit today. I'm going to be reading to you from this article, Who Will Get to Make the Rules for the New Economy? My convo with a tough-talking trucker. Tough-talking trucker. Freight rates have dipped over year for 6 months straight. Some economists see that as a big problem because in past recessionary times, shipping rates went down first. It was a harbinger of bad times to come. So for 6 months now, we've had freight rates going down. Independent truckers conversing in the Facebook group Black Smoke Matters and in other forums on Facebook and elsewhere have been frustrated with the going rates to haul freight. They have many other frustrations as well, but this topic seems to generate the most angst. Two primary schools of thought have emerged. A, we need to stop hauling cheap freight. And B, we need to shut down the entire country until we can coerce the DC rulemakers to unrig the system. I tend to go with that one, the second one. I typically say something like, what most working class Americans possess is nothing like true freedom. They are kept just comfortable enough so that they will continue to serve as cogs in the machinery, but their productivity has been harnessed in the same way as has the productivity of those lower down in the pecking order, say Walmart workers who work 40 hours a week and are still on public assistance. The long and short of it is our productivity, the labor force, has increased 400% since 1950, but we don't make 400% more money and we don't work a fourth as many hours per week. So we work more hours than we did in 1950 and we make a much smaller percentage of our overall productivity. Why is that? And we've talked about this before. So I said in a recent conversation that we've been taught to believe in America that the harder a person works and the more skill and talent a person possesses and the more ability a person has to work well with others, the more success each such person ought to be able to enjoy. A lot of people think about that as the very essence of the United States of America. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness means that we can work hard and be smart and get ahead. Here is a rebuttal from someone who thinks along the first school of thought, we need to stop hauling cheap freight and that will fix everything. So this guy says, we still have the power to game the system to our advantage. Every time the government intervenes, it fails. Poverty rates have increased since LBJ declared war on poverty. Entitlements create the dependent class. True freedom, eliminate the mandated safety nets and let the free market naturally fix the issues you speak of. Straight from Hannity. Now, I've already talked about this before, so I'm quoting a little bit from another Medium article, but also I kind of alter it as I go. We have never had a free market. We always have had a rigged market where the rule makers make rules to favor big money over the little guy. And then I talk about what freedom really means. Economic freedom is a fundamental freedom, and most other freedoms flow from economic freedom. And then I talk about real capitalism as opposed to predatory rigged capitalism. I got that idea from a renegade YouTube where the two German economists were interviewed and they talked about real capitalism versus predatory capitalism, or what do they call it? Financial capitalism, where the system is designed to move money to the top. A lot of people are spreading rumors, mostly on corporate media, that progressives, such as Bernie Sanders, are commies, pinko commies. I remember, I'm old enough to remember how that used to go, the red baiting and all that. And I want to say that if you're watching your news on corporate news outlets, you're going to be hearing a lot of slogans and other things that just aren't true. True progressives seek to uphold the Constitution, and they don't get credit for it, even as they look for ways to ensure that loopholes are not exploited to subvert its intentions. So progressives, the ones I follow and the ones I admire, are constitutionalists. That's why many on the right are beginning to notice some overlap in the way they think about freedom and the way true progressives think about freedom. Elizabeth Warren is a different matter. She's not a true progressive. Pundits on the right on Fox News will be upset if conservatives, traditional conservatives, understand that progressives aren't what they are portrayed to be in the news. I've talked about this book a few times, Rigged, Dean Baker's Rigged, How Globalization and the Rules of the Modern Economy Were Structured to Make the Rich Richer. Baker says, we live in an interventionist economy, an economy where the government has intervened in a variety of ways that have had the effect of shifting income upward. If this intervention in turn lowers consumption and therefore output and employment, a policy of not intervening is in fact a choice to let the earlier interventions go unchallenged. The beneficiaries of the upward redistribution may like the outcome, but it is not because they prefer leaving matters to the market. Rather, they prefer government interventions that have the effect of giving them more money. And these are the same people that say, oh, we need a free market. No, we need what we've already rigged. We don't want you to change it. And people on the right are starting to figure it out. They have never trusted the government, and when they realize that a free market has never existed, they might, some of them, truck drivers I talk to, are starting to come around to this idea. Even Trump has said that the game is rigged. So the task is to get hardworking, freedom-loving Americans on both sides of the political aisle to understand that the true enemy is not artificially designated groups of other hardworking Americans, or even Americans who are down on their luck, or even Americans who are lazy. You're not going to find the true villain there. You're just scapegoating people because they don't really cost us that much when we're thinking about our overall economy. Not very much of our overall economy is going to help people in the way that the guy up here is saying. He says that since LBJ declared war on poverty, we've had more poverty, and that entitlements create the dependent class. I don't think people are as lazy as this guy says they are. So the real enemy is the small group of central bankers, hedge fund managers, and transnational corporate CEOs who want to export our jobs to cheaper labor markets and export the fruits of our labor into their pockets. That's where that 400% increase in our productivity is going. It's not going into welfare. It's not going into food stamps. It's going right into corporate welfare, where the big money people get bailed out. Chris Hedges, quoting a book by Robert E. Gamer, The Developing Nations, says that the oppressed often do revolt, but the object of their hostility is misplaced. We have a lot of people that are feeling like revolting. They vent their fury on a political puppet, someone who masks colonial power. That would be Trump. A despised racial or ethnic group, that would be minorities of every kind, or an apostate within their own political class. I'm not sure who that would be. The useless battles serve as an effective mask for what Gamer calls the patron-client networks that are responsible for the continuity of colonial oppression. I'd say those networks are the network news. The squabbles among the oppressed, the political campaigns between candidates who each are servants of colonial power, Gamer writes, absolve the actual centers of power from addressing the conditions that cause the frustrations of the people. Inequities, political disenfranchisement, and injustices are never seriously addressed. That's what the incrementalists never do. They never seriously address the problems of the lower and middle classes. The government merely does the minimum necessary to prevent those few who are prone toward political action from organizing into politically effective groups. So then back to the super trucker. I outperform the mega carriers. I don't support the overregulation of trucking, but it doesn't hold me back one bit. So then I reply, let's just discuss the way the system works then. If the system is set up to kill the little guy and you figure out how to weather the storm, okay for you, I guess. Pretty big assumption, though, on your part that you will always be able to stay one jump ahead. Why not work together to make the system better for everyone? He says, why would I do that when I know how to game the system the way it is? Nobody helped me. I learned from my mistakes. Those who refuse to learn from their mistakes should deal with the consequences. And I said, here's hoping you never need help. Aw, here's the deal, bro. Read again. You don't know me. Great. You don't know if I have or haven't helped people who were buried because I'm not a glory hound and I don't make a big deal about it. You advocating for changing the system isn't helping anyone. You only want to pick different winners and losers. No different than Trump when he talks about building walls and deporting people based on their citizenship status. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. Now, I've got to say, when he says you only want to pick different winners and losers, he's right. And that's what happens in a bad way. In the past, George Orwell's Animal Farm is a good representation of when we have new winners and new losers, and it's even worse than it was before. But that's not what I'm advocating. My reply, systems don't just happen. Somebody makes them. As you point out, there are different winners and losers depending on how it's set up. Change the rules and you will change who can win. The way it's set up now, there are a few winners and everyone else works for them, like the mega carriers in trucking. Right now, the people who are winning and feel that their success is contingent upon the failure of others would want to keep it that way. Obvi. So now I'm putting words in his mouth. I say, speaking for you, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and I like it like that. Of course I am a nice guy and help a few people out here and there. I occasionally toss a few fish to losers that deserve their fate. I've even given some of the brighter ones good advice that has helped them improve their ability to better game the system. And then I speak for myself. I'm a teacher. My classroom is a system. I set it up differently than our country is set up. Both systems are intentional and they work exactly as they're designed to do. In both cases, the decision makers have chosen the system they want, and it is working exactly to plan. Nothing is broken. And in neither case would anyone want anything to change. In my classroom, it's set up so everyone can win if they put in the effort to win. Everyone who has drive and talent can succeed. Opportunistic bullies are hindered and limited from achieving success that is contingent upon the failure of others. It's an abundance model. The rulemaker, me, has set it up win-win. All the scarcity thinkers, the win-lose or the lose-lose, are probably frustrated, but hey, that's how it's set up. If you, the guy I'm arguing with, if you were in my classroom, you might advocate to change the system to a scarcity model because you prefer it that way. In my classroom, you would not achieve that goal. In other classrooms, many of the teachers think more about themselves than about their students. I've seen this in higher education and K through 12 education. I've seen it even in music. They set up the rules to make it difficult for first-generation college students to succeed. They also set up their classrooms to make it easy for students who are bullies to bully other students if it helps the teacher maintain an environment where the larger societal status quo can be maintained. And this works equally well for, quote, liberals and, quote, conservatives. These teachers, these bully teachers, they play favorites. They use students as pawns in a game that works a lot like the larger political game works. Students, especially those with talent and drive, who are in any way perceived as outsiders, are treated in the same way that insurgent populists are treated by our current political parties and corporate media. Other professors, the insurgent types, if they're perceived as populist outsiders, they're treated even worse than the students are treated. And you thought that professors were not conservative. The professors who think they're not conservative, the bully ones, are fooling themselves and everyone else. Yes, I want to change the rules. My agenda is different than yours. You won't change your mind about what you want the system to be like. Neither will I. May the better system win. Projecting into the future, I'm interested in how you will game the system when autonomous vehicles are fully implemented. We might both be dead by then. But one thing's for sure, there will be a political skirmish as the transition is made. The shot callers will contend with each other as the new rules are implemented. You and I will have no control over how the new economy, the one that won't need workers at all, will be set up. You like to think that you are the master of your own fate, but in reality, unless you have some input when the new rules are made, it's a crapshoot. Hopefully you won't roll snake eyes. So I said, without the need for workers. The economy will always need some workers, will always need people to make adjustments and fix the broken machinery, but we won't have the main employer be trucking companies. Right now, more people are working as drivers, professional drivers, than any other segment of the population. And obviously that's going to change. And obviously the rules of the game are going to change. And it won't go to anything natural like the weather. The weather. Weather isn't natural either, but that's a different video. But we can't just assume that some arbitrary market is really arbitrary. Every game has rules, and if we want them to be fair, we're going to have to get involved in influencing the system. Keep on rolling.